James, are we good to go?
Mayor Gilvin, we have reached the appointed hour. All members of City Council are present. Our live stream has begun. I am starting the recording at this time. And the meeting is yours, sir.
Thanks, sir. And once again, I appreciate you getting all of this set up. Don't know what we'd do without you. So, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I hope everyone is doing well, staying safe. And welcome you all to the May 4th, 2020 Alpharetta City Council meeting. And as always, we will begin with a Pledge of Allegiance. So if you will, please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. A bit of background noise here. Not sure where that was coming from, but hope it's not too distracting for those of you that are watching this evening. First item up on our agenda this evening will be presentations and proclamations. The CDC. And if Ms. Cook is here, I'd like her to give maybe a little pre-introduction to allow the public to understand a little more of what we're doing here this evening.
Sure. Thank you. Just a little background. Ben Kern from Community Development and I met Kelly with the CDC at a placemaking conference in Chattanooga. It was actually October of 2019. And we did a presentation on the loop. She approached us about partnering with Georgia Tech School of Industrial Design to have the students study the Alpha Loop and basically provide design ideas to promote greater amounts of physical activity on the trail. The students, you will see, we're not given a construction budget. So that was to make sure that we have full, creativity. And they looked at creating a framework for more mobility and opportunity. So we were just thrilled to be able to work with them. And of course, Morgan helped us. So we thank you also, Morgan. But if it's okay with you, Mayor, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Kelly with the CDC.
All right. Hello, everyone. Good evening. I'm not sure should I be sharing my screen for the slide presentation? Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, please do. You
Okay.
are set to do that.
All right. Whoops. All right. Let me know if you guys can see.
There we go. You are good.
All right, perfect. Well, I just am going to say a brief presentation here just to set the stage for these incredible students. This has been one of my favorite projects to be connected with, and they have overcome so many obstacles with virtual reality right now, and I think you guys will really enjoy what they've come up with. But as Kathy mentioned, this actually stemmed from a larger initiative that we started, launched in January 2019 at CDC called the Active People Healthy Nation Initiative. And it really stems from the fact that too few Americans get the recommended amount of physical activity. Our current stats are about 31 million adults aged 50 and older are inactive. And this really becomes an issue when we think about the connection to chronic disease prevention. So it's adults and high school students not meeting our aerobic and muscle strengthening guidelines to get the benefits that come with physical activity. And these are varied. There's lots of immediate and short-term benefits. Immediate benefits is mindfulness and better sleep and dealing with some coping mechanisms of anxiety. And then we also see in the long term some economic benefits and longer term, chronic disease prevention that can happen. So there are short and long-term benefits of living an active lifestyle. And we envision a world where that's possible for everyone. So our initiative called Active People Healthy Nation, our goal is by 2027 to help 27 million Americans become more physically active, because we believe that we can see a lot more improved health and quality of life and reducing healthcare costs through just having access to physical activity. So what does this look like? We envision a world where this is convenient and safe to be active. And you'll see all these images from communities and people all over the country. And it really relates to what is happening with the Alpha Loop in Alpharetta. And these are the types of communities that we see as activity friendly that can really benefit from people living active lifestyles. So what works? Well, there are several strategies to increase physical activity that our work in the Physical Activity and Health branch at CDC really works toward, and they're listed here. There's a wide variety of ways that communities can work on building that physical activity environment, and it's all based on equity and having inclusive access for all ages and abilities. But I'm going to focus today on the top strategy, which is activity-friendly routes to everyday destinations. This is really the anchor that started Active People Healthy Nation in terms of how can we help create these built environment accessible areas where people can get safely and conveniently in an activity-friendly way. So here's a little illustration. This looks like, maybe a town near you, someplace, an intersection in Alpharetta, for example. But what if we created a little bit more of an infrastructure change to allow for people to walk safely across the streets? And then I'll challenge us to even think further and think, what if we created some other infrastructure and had convenience stores and places where people could get their essential needs in a safe way and maybe aesthetically pleasing as well? This might be the type of community that you'd want to live in. So when we think about this from a public health perspective, we certainly can't do this work alone. This is a cross-sector effort. Active People Healthy Nation is public health's effort to work with all these other sectors in healthcare, transportation, and education, and all of the above. I have the highlighted purple area here of the arts because this is a relatively new friend of ours from our branch in physical activity, arts and culture partners. And we see the benefit that they can add of helping to implement a lot of these strategies for activity-friendly routes to everyday destinations. So when we looked at other arts initiatives and funders from like the National Endowment for the Arts and some other large national organizations that were funding communities to look in an artistic and aesthetically pleasing way, it turned out that a lot of them were implementing art in routes or destinations where people could then possibly be more active and help implement our evidence-based strategies. So you'll see here some under highway alleyways that have been converted to be with lights and having it be more walkable and making connections between two parts of towns. We see this on stairwells and people in intersections where there's using art to really create the infrastructure of the built environment to support physically active lifestyles. So we recently, in the fall, we wrote a commentary with the National Endowment for the Arts, and it was published in the Journal of Physical Activity and Health. And it was all about looking at how the arts sector can be a strategic partner for our communities that would like to build an activity-friendly space. And so I even included our wonderful airport down there. Many of you, if you've walked in between terminals, you might be familiar with that, with the light display, but these were just examples that we were seeing, and we highlighted these types of connections of activity-friendly routes to destinations in the commentary and encouraged people to explore those partnerships. So I'll put this QR code up here. Active People Healthy Nation is something that everyone can join, from individual and families to organizations and community champions like yourself, as a mayor of an activity-friendly community. And we encourage everyone to find out more and join the initiative. So I am pleased to turn it back over to our Georgia Tech students, because when we told them about this initiative and we saw the benefit of having an artistic and industrial design framework applied to activity-friendly community infrastructure, we think that this is a really unique opportunity for the city of Alpharetta. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay, hello, this is Anna. I'm one of the Georgia Tech students. I'm gonna share my screen, if that's okay.
Please proceed.
Right.
All right, so hello everyone. This is Seth, and I'll be presenting or starting the presentation for me, myself, Hannah, Anna, and Pierce. So we're here to present Alpha Hubs as our concept for a way that you can train the Alpha Loop. So starting off, we wanted to kind of frame out what our objective would be for the project. We wanted to help ourselves understand it. So a few of the things that we really looked at here were designing an environment that encourages users to make outdoor activity and social interaction a part of their everyday life by incorporating interactive installations and engaging experiences into the Alpha Loop. So going from there, we developed a few design criteria that we thought would be really important to help make sure that our project and concepts would be the most successful that they could be. So the most important things that we looked at were the concept must promote an active lifestyle. This goes hand in hand with what the CDC was hoping for us to accomplish. The next thing was it has to perform functions superior to comparable locations. So what this is pretty much saying is compared to other things that might be trying to do the same thing, make people active, ours needs to be able to do better than that. And then the third most important thing was to have a capability to be used year round. So pretty much this was saying that we need to make sure our concepts can be used by people throughout all the different seasons Alpharetta might experience throughout any given year. Moving from there, we kind of did a little bit of research to look at how we can target different age group personas, because there's a lot of different age groups of people that will be using the Alpha Loop and all of the things that will be on it in the future. So one of the things we looked at was how to target kids. That could be playgrounds, adventures, competitions. Teenagers are looking for places to take pictures for their Instagrams. Students are looking for places to socialize and also do work. Parents are mostly looking for places that are safe for their kids and places that can educate their kids. Adults without kids are looking for places to socialize, shop, relax, exercise, those types of things. And then to target the elderly, we really needed to look at how to make the place handicap accessible and have a lot of seating to allow the elderly to take breaks when needed. So going from there, we go into our concept, which is the Alpha Hubs. So we defined this as themed destinations along the Alpha Loop, designed to engage the entire community in an active and healthy lifestyle. So what this looked like was having all of these different hubs you can see on the map throughout the section of the Alpha Loop that we were targeting. So it starts with the art hub on the right and then goes to a work hub, music hub, play hub, exercise hub, and history hub. And now we'll go through each of those in more detail to show you why we decided on each of those hubs and each of their locations. But before we go into that, we're going to talk about the wayfinding that we developed for the path. So what this looked like was just little markers that we could place along the path that kind of show the distance between each of the hubs. And then there's different arrows that show the directions until you get there. And this kind of helps reference the looping motif that the Alpha Loop would have.
Okay, so the first hub we're going to talk about is the art hub. And this hub is placed at the rightmost end of the map that we just showed. We decided to place it here because it's visible from the street, so it'll attract users who are passing by. And the tunnel that's going to be at this end also provides good opportunities for incorporating art pieces. And these are the insights that we focused on when designing for this hub. The first being the idea of evolving art, which is that art is always changing. The second is interactive art, which is the idea that art can be experienced using more than just sight. And then accessibility, which is the idea that the artwork needs to be accessible to everyone. Our first concept is for the tunnel. So the tunnel shape can be used to mimic the loop shape of the Alpha Loop logo. You can see this double loop in the bottom left picture. And we also want to incorporate murals and light installations to the tunnel to add delight to the experience of walking through it. And then our second concept is photo op installations. And these installations should be used to promote Alpharetta and the Alpha Loop. So the image that the photo op portrays should be relevant to Alpharetta. And we want to incorporate interactive installations, which are basically art pieces that the users can interact with. These installations would encourage the community to talk about the novel experiences created by them. And these installations could change throughout the year so that Alpha Loop users continue to come back and explore the Alpha Loop. We also want to incorporate other artwork installations to add visual interest to the hub. These installations should include a variety of different art styles to appeal to different users. And some of the installations can be permanent so that users begin to associate them with the Alpha Loop. And some of the installations can also change throughout the year to keep users coming back. the seating in the art hub should also be an art piece in itself. It should be interesting to look at. And it should be group seating that's used to encourage community interaction. And this is an example of the application of the photo op concept. So this is just an example of how it could incorporate the Alpha Loop branding. And then there's an example of that with the tunnel and the murals as well. And in the top right corner, you can see that the art hub is one of the main entrances for this section of the Alpha Loop. You can see that in the purple highlight within the map. And now we will talk about the music hub, or the work hub, sorry.
Hi, this is Hannah. I'm going to be talking about the work hub. So for the location of the work hub, we wanted to place it in an area where it could be a splinter off of the main trail, as well as have a central location so it could be accessible to professionals from the nearby businesses and students from the adjacent neighborhoods. And also the central location would keep it isolated from street traffic noise. So the insights that we were basing off the inclusion of the work hub for were community connectedness and worker activity. We wanted to create an area that would allow for a lot of different individuals to come and work because everyone's looking for a change of scenery to inspire them. And also we wanted to create an area that would allow people to be productive and encourage them to get engaged with their community in an area like this. So some of the amenities that we think should be included are work desks and meeting spaces. Desks would be helpful for individual work, while meeting spaces would encourage collaboration and allow for people to have a space to meet together. Another amenity would be charging stations. This would allow users to work in this area for an extended period of time and not have to worry about their laptop dying. Also, by including solar-powered charging stations, it would promote the Alpha Loop's identity as being like environmentally responsible. So whenever you think of a place to go to work, you would immediately think of a cafe. So we wanted to include like the cafe aspect, but also take the cafe and do it better than them. But by including cafes like your local Atlanta coffee shops, local Alpharetta coffee shops, that would include and incorporate that little bit of culture and small business into this area of the Alpha Loop. Fun seating could also be incorporated to make it more of a relaxing work environment, make the users feel more comfortable, and also give them a change of pace or the ability to take a break while in this work environment. So we also thought about, what about weather? We want this to be usable year round. So by including these enclosed workspaces, it would be good for meetings, but also good to allow for the functionality and appeal of the hub year round. And by including things like space heaters and other temperature regulators, it would further ensure like the comfort of this area year round whenever it's hot or cold or raining. So here you can see the application we envision for this area. This area of the trail is a terraced landscape. So by organizing the features in a way to conform to the landscape, we could make the most of this area. You can see the inclusion of some solar panels and the solar powered charging ports, as well as an indoor meeting space. There's a bar where the visitors can get coffee and work, and there's also a standing work area along the patio. And then to the right, you can see the enclosed work areas. And in the top right, you can see the map, which shows the different access points of this hub. And it just shows how they can easily connect with the nearby businesses as well as the neighborhoods. So yeah, next up, I think, is Anna talking about the music hub.
Yes. So the music hub is centrally located in this section of the Alpha Loop with easy access from the surrounding neighborhoods and businesses. And this section also has a suitable landscape for the amphitheater that we want to include. So these are the insights that we kept in mind. The idea of the Music City and Alpharetta wanting to embrace that. And the idea of breweries and that people just prefer to have local food and drink options at places that they're going. And then also the idea that people need destinations on the Alpha Loop in order to make it a part of their everyday lives. So our first concept is the amphitheater that I mentioned a second ago. And this amphitheater would be built into the natural landscape. It would create a local venue for concerts and community events while maintaining the natural environment of the Alpha Loop. And then we also want to include instrument installations. These instruments would encourage creativity among users, and they could be placed individually as well as in groups of instruments. And the groupings would encourage collaboration between Alpha Loop users. We also want to include sculptural installations to add interest to the music hub. The interest can be created visually and with sound through sculptures that utilize wind to produce sound. And these sculptures can change throughout the year, again, to keep users coming back. We also want to include murals to add visual interest. The murals would include music-related imagery, and they would also change throughout the year. And then our final concept for the music hub is having food and drink carts for local vendors. So the vendors would change throughout the day. They'd serve healthy options in the morning and afternoon, and then they could change and serve beer and wine in the evening and during events at the amphitheater. And this is an example of the application of the amphitheater concept. It would have a wall with the mural on it to separate it from the main piece of the Alpha Loop path. And then in the map, again, you can see the access points to this hub. So the orange shows that the music hub is centrally located, and then it has the pieces that split off to connect to the neighborhoods and businesses.
So next, I'm going to talk to you about the Play Hub. So the Play Hub is focused on playgrounds for children, and it's centrally located close to the residential zones for this reason. This allows the children to have easy access to the playgrounds and make it easier for them to get active on an everyday basis. And its close proximity to the center of the paths is important for child safety reasons. So the insights that kind of led to this was first parental and safety oversight. So parents really need a place where they can watch their kids and make sure that their kids are going to be safe while they're playing on a playground. The second was educational opportunities. We realized that playgrounds are a great place that can be used to educate children in small ways, whether it be mathematics, geometry, biology and science, or even history. The third insight was recontextualizing for play and exploration. So what this is saying is that kids will see things through the lens of wanting to play and explore. So if we can make the playground look like a place that a kid will want to have an adventure on, it will be more successful in making them want to come out and play. And then the fourth insight for the Play Hub was unique interactive play sets. So this was looking at ways that we can change the way playgrounds have existed for as long as we can remember, and finding new and interactive ways that we can play with kids. So the first area we're going to look at is the parent area. So this is a place that's very important for the parents to be able to relax and look after their kids while they're having fun, but also allow them easy access to go and play with their kids too and be active if they feel like they want to do that. So the seating should encourage parents to get outside and be active with their kids, but it should also be comfortable and diverse to accommodate all the different ranges that parents will be looking for in their seating. The second area we looked at was the education. So this is products that should have some educational goal, but also be able to hold the attention of children, because one of the things we realized was that children have really short attention spans, but we also want to help them be able to learn. So finding fun ways that we can combine the education with holding their attention is really important for them. The third thing we looked at was adventure. So most kids, as I already have said, have a short attention span, and they need to keep busy when they're playing. So we looked at a lot of different outdoor and kind of environmental ways that we can engage in adventure with the kids and create an environment that looks like an adventure waiting to happen, whether it be a ropes course on the ground or even tree ropes that kids get to climb on, or a giant wooden adventure playgrounds. And the fourth thing that we looked at was the interaction. So one way to keep the attention of children is to have fun interactive elements that are always engaging, and they can be looked at in new and different ways, as you can see in a couple of these images. So new toys that have moving parts can keep the attention of the kids, and it can also help to educate them in some ways. And then continuous loops help encourage kids to play in new ways, and it also kind of connects with the Alpha Loop motif. So the application of this area, as you can see, it's closely centered inside of the Alpha Loop. This allows it easy and safe access to each of the neighborhoods in the area. And then by focusing on the comfort of parents and the minds of kids, we can increase the overall activity of both of the age groups involved.
Great. Good evening, everyone. My name is Piers Merkisich. It's great to be here presenting to you guys, albeit virtually. this has been a really exciting project for us at Georgia Tech on our end. So the exercise hub is isolated from the main trail to preserve privacy because many people don't feel comfortable sweating or being visible all the time when they exercise. It's also located where it is because it's close to the road, so people that want to drive to the Alpha Loop to do exercise, it's not too far for them to go. And it's a convenient meeting location. Our key insights were people that want to work out are really invested in their safety and their privacy. They want to be comfortable when they work out. Our workout options should be accessible to all and be able to accommodate as many different individuals across as many different demographics as possible. And the third insight is designated traffic flow. So people should be able to know where to find these designated workout spots. Great, so our first concept was a pump track. And if you're not sure what a pump track is, it's a circuit of rollers and bank turns designed to be ridden by riders on skateboards or bicycles, pumping, generating momentum up and down, and never having to use their pedals, essentially. So they're multifunctional, all ages and abilities can use them, and they're classified as low risk. So our concept here is to have a pump track traversing the whole of the Alpha Loop, graded by levels of accessibility. We would have, obviously someone here is passing through a beginner arch, and then we would have a more advanced section of the pump track and an expert section. Correct. So who would be riding our beginner tracks? So this includes, but not limited to, people that are disabled in wheelchairs, commuters who are riding bird scooters who want to spice up their trip through the Alpha Loop, recreational cyclists, children, and rollerbladers. And we come a level up for the advanced tracks as people pass under the A-framed arch. This is for people who are frequent track users who are looking to improve their skills with peers at their level. And this is characterized by faster chicanes, intermediate jumps and rails. And yeah, the next one, please. And finally, we have expert tracks, people that are allured to the Alpha Loop because they're seeking adrenaline, and they want those kind of experiences. And this is characterized by sharper banks and more intense jumps. The second concept that is a little bit out of the ordinary is a parkour park. I'm sure you're aware of what parkour is, but it's also going to be combined with a free weight area and a calisthenic workout. So this is a rendering of what our vision for the parkour park could look like. And this would also be graded by ability. So you could have kids and families who want to have a go on the beginner track, try that. And then also this is a rendering of the expert, what that would look like. And it can be group or individual, and it's a gathering venue for community lessons. Thanks.
Hi, this is Hannah again. I'm going to tell you about our last hub, which is the History Hub. So we placed it in this location because it's visible from the street at the opposite end of this trail, so it attract attention and attract visitors to this part of the trail. So the insights that we based off the inclusion of this were the passion for history, sense of belonging, and sculptural history. So passion for history, the city of Alpharetta is proud of its history, so we wanted to include it and display it in this section of the Alpha Loop. Also, we wanted to create sort of a common bond for the members of the community in this area, because if people engage with the history, they'll feel like they belong and want to come to this area. And also we wanted to include sculpture to have like a visual way of telling the story of Alpharetta's history. So now I'm going to talk about the features that we think should be included in this area. Like we talked about in a couple of the other hubs, we wanted to include art, and in this area, it would add visual interest, and we could incorporate different pieces that are specific to Alpharetta's history. Also, murals are a great way to attract different demographics, whether they want to take photos with this or whether parents take their children to this area to educate them. You can depict different moments from Alpharetta's history, and overall, we just think it's a good way to educate visitors. Next, we have a feature that would be a community garden. Not only would this bring members of the community together, but it would also tie in the agricultural history of Alpharetta, so sort of a tribute to that aspect of Alpharetta's history. Next, we could include informational signage throughout the area. So that would be more of a passive way to educate visitors about the history of Alpharetta. So by incorporating like engaging and interesting signs and placing them throughout the community garden, we can educate visitors and create an enjoyable learning experience. So this is a depiction of what we think this area could look like. You can see on the upper right-hand corner, walking in, there could be a grand arch in the shape of an A for Alpharetta Alpha Loop. And we just kind of view this as like a walk through history, a beautiful garden that's visible from the main street. It could have signage teaching about the history of Alpharetta and also community garden plots. And then further into the trail, you would see sculpture and more informational signage. And this area would just be engaging for visitors who want to learn a little bit more about the history. You can see in the upper right-hand corner where this connects to the neighborhoods as well as the main street. So that is all we have for the hubs. Now I'm just going to talk a little bit about how we weighed our concepts against the design criteria that we mentioned at the very beginning. Now you can show the chart, please. Thank you. So this is just a chart of the criteria that we believe we accomplished through our hubs. Along the top, you can see the names of each of the hubs, and along the side, you can see each of the must, should, and nice to have criteria. As you can see, there's not a plus in every single box because none of the concepts can be perfect, but we do believe that we accomplished all of the must-have criteria. So next, we would want to get stakeholder feedback. That would be you all. And then we want to help you follow the guidelines that we laid out for hopefully choosing these different Alpha Hub elements. We want to execute and implement the design ideas, get people off their couches, and lastly, measure the Alpha Hub activity to evaluate the success of the Alpha Hubs. So now we open the floor to any questions or comments that you all may have. Thank you for listening.
I'm not sure where the static's coming from, but if you're not speaking, you might want to put yourself on. There we go. The first question I had was from Councilwoman Karen Richard.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just want to take a second to compliment our Georgia Tech team, Seth, Anna, Hannah, and Pierce. I think you guys have done a tremendous job here with this presentation. I had the opportunity to be on your call a couple of weeks ago when we first reviewed the presentation with the Community Development Department, and I was blown away then, and I think it's so creative. It's very impressive. I understand that you all are from different parts of the world, so I think it would be helpful if we could just ask each of you to tell us where you're from. I think that helps inform our understanding as far as your work is concerned.
I'll start. I'm Anna. I'm from Atlanta.
I'm Hannah. I'm from Athens, Georgia.
Hi, I'm Piers, and I'm speaking to you from Auckland, New Zealand currently.
And I'm Seth Kruver, speaking to you from Peachtree City, Georgia.
Is that everyone?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, thank you. It's Auckland. Thank you for joining us. That is terrific, and I'm sure I'm being told that my audio is awful. So I'll just quickly say thank you for your presentation. I think this gives the city an opportunity to look at some very creative ideas as we continue to move forward with expanding the Alpha Loop, and it's wonderful things for us to look at working with our sponsors and partners on as we move forward. And I think I'm going to end my comments. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Is there any other questions or comments from council at this time? Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell. You're on mute.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to thank all the folks from Georgia Tech and also our the involvement from the CDC. I know this is a hard time for you all to be involved in any extracurricular things, but this program really did encompass all the things that I think most of us want to see in a city, in a proper city, and it reaches every age group, from the history to the young and middle-aged citizens. It gives everybody something to grasp with the Alpha Loop and call it their own. So thank you for all your hard work and dedication. It was a very professional display, and I just wanted to thank them. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Well, welcome, sir. Let's see. I believe Councilman Burnett had a question or a comment.
Yeah, I appreciate the insight and the depth that you guys were able to accomplish. I would love to see, there were a lot of concepts that we've never discussed. I love the exercise attributes around different parts of the loop. And I would like to potentially look at some of the, I won't say areas outside of downtown, to look at some of the, ADA things like the pump track you had displayed. It would be really cool to let some of those people have access to it. And I would love to see some alternate attributes to the loop besides potentially walking. I know that there's somewhat disdain for people who use things besides their legs in this town, but I would like to potentially explore that. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, sir. Any other questions or comments from council members? I'm not seeing anyone else. So I'd just like to add my 2 cents worth as well. I thought y'all did a tremendous job. There's some fascinating ideas in there that we had not contemplated. We talked about using art and some of the other easier low-hanging fruit to make it interesting. But I really like some of the concepts you had. Clearly, Kathy was right, though. There was no cost estimates included in some of that stuff. So we might have to find some benefactors to fund some of those. And it was incredible ideas. I loved a lot of the interactive parts and the music incorporation. And the idea of making the workspace is really interesting in some of the sections of the Alpha Loop, over along North Point, over along in Brookfield Park. I think that's really fascinating and not something I'd ever heard of or conceived. So I appreciate your creativity and your talents, and hope to be working with you in the future as we put some of that into action. If there's no other comments or questions from council, we'll close this up. But thank you very much, everyone. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So the next item up on our agenda this evening is the consent agenda, and the consent agenda consists of the council meeting minutes from our meeting on April 27th, 2020 and April 30th, 2020. Do I have anyone that would like to remove anything from the consent agenda this evening? Seeing none, I'll call for a motion. Was that a motion by Councilman Binder and a second by Councilman Mitchell?
I'm going to go with yes, just for time's sake.
Okay.
It wasn't me.
Blurb and Mayor Pro Tem still is on mute, so I wasn't sure.
I'll second that.
So we do have a motion by Councilman Binder and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell. All those in favor of, I can't do it that way. I've got to do roll call again. But let's call roll call. Karen, Councilwoman Richard, do you approve of the consent agenda?
I approve.
Councilman Burnett, do you approve of the consent agenda?
Approve.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell, do you approve? Councilman Murphy, do you approve? Was that a yes?
Yeah,
Okay.
audio's breaking up.
That's right. I saw you nodding your head. I just wanted to make sure we had that one for the record. There we go. Councilman Heights, do you approve? Approve. Thank you, sir. I do approve as well, so it does pass unanimously. Next item up on the agenda is the old business portion of tonight's meeting. And the only old business item actually this evening is the ordinance amendment, Chapter 46, Article 2 of the City Code. This is the second reading. Director Robinson and Mr. Thomas, you have the floor.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Yes, this is the second reading of this ordinance. Just in summary, this would allow myself and our department to designate specific parking areas, zones, and spaces within the city. Ultimately, it's mainly directed for parking that's prohibited during all times or designated times for specified events. But it is may not exceed a specific consecutive period of time, but it gives us the authority, if we do designate an area to be a non-parking area, to enforce that if need be.
All right, Mr. Thomas. Do we have Mr. Thomas with us this evening?
He is with us, Mr. Mayor. Oh, I think he just opened
James,
up.
can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, this is there have been no changes, and this is the second reading, and this is the title that will be read into the record. An ordinance amending Chapter 46, Article 2 of the Code of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia, to provide for regulation and enforcement of temporary or no parking zones, to provide that the amendment shall become part of the Code of the City of Alpharetta, to provide for an effective date and for other purposes.
Thanks, sir. Do you have any questions or comments about this item? I'm not seeing any. And as I recall, there are no changes since the first reading. Is that correct? I take that as a yes.
That is correct, sir. Yes.
No changes.
All right, sir. Thank
My
you.
mute button keeps playing tricks on me. I apologize.
That's quite all right. So if there are no questions or comments from council at this time, it is the second reading, so there'll be no public comment. I'll call the motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that City Council approve the ordinance amending Chapter 46, Article 2 of the City Code as read into the record, the title read into the record by Sam Thomas on this May 4th.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Heights and a second by Councilman Merkel. Any discussion on this item? Seeing none, I'd just like to thank y'all for getting this done. I think it's going to help downtown, and we appreciate it because our businesses downtown need all the help they can get right now. So I'll go ahead and call roll call. Councilwoman Richard.
Approve. Approve.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Burnett, do you approve of the ordinance amendment, Chapter 46, Article 2 of the City Code?
Approve.
Thank you, sir. Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell, do you approve or not approve?
Approve.
Councilman Binder, do you approve or not approve?
Approve.
Do you approve or not approve?
Approve.
Councilman Heights, do you approve?
Approve.
Thank you, sir. And I do as well. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone. That'll wrap up old business on the agenda this evening, and we'll move on to the new business for this evening. First item on the new business agenda is ITB 20-015, State Road 9 at Marietta Street, mid-block crossing. And Mr. Sasevich, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before you tonight is on the State Road 9 Marietta Street walk at Marietta Street. We talked about this last week during the workshop item, and we had a total of 5 bidders. Chattahoochee Group was the low bid at $191,983.87. If you recall, we have about a 6-month lead time in the mast arms, and working with our contractor, we're going to try to expedite it as fast as we can. But we'll look at starting about a month prior to the mast arms being delivered, and then wrapping up once the mast arms get delivered for the project. There is one small change that we might be looking into for this, and on the northern side of the crosswalk where a lot of the red is there, we're looking to see if we can add some landscaping elements, some shrubs. I do not believe we'll get a tree in just due to sight distance, but some lower lying shrubs to help break up the brick pavers. So this contractor has done work all across the southeast, and we have great confidence to be able to complete the project in a timely manner.
Thanks, sir. Do we have any questions or comments from council at this time? All right, I'm not seeing any questions from council.
No.
Mr. Mayor, we appear to have 2, one from Mr. Hypes and one from Mr. Merkel.
Okay, I got to open my screen. I couldn't see them. There we go. All right, so I'm sorry about that. Councilman Merkel, do you have any questions about this?
Well, you said questions or comments. I don't have any questions.
Okay.
I did comments. My wife and I walked this on Saturday, and that's a long way across the street, right in that position right there. That spot right there. It looked twice, 12 different times back and forth. So I think this is amazing. This is a great thing. It's going to help bring things close. It's going to slow things down going into downtown because you come off of crossing over Old Milton Parkway. They just get, I mean, they're picking up speed, and you can see the brake lights after this intersection starting into downtown, and this will make it much better. I'm very happy that this has been put together and very much in support of it. Thank you.
All right, sir. And I believe they said Councilman Hypes had a question.
Yes, this is for Pete. Will there be any problems down the road if we need to install, I think it's called bollards, the things that stick up out of the road like we have down there in front of Crust, to have those so that not if, but when the cars go between Salt and Taco Bell to come out and go straight across and make a left onto South Highway 9, we're going to be able to do something in that area to prevent that?
Yes, sir. We can easily add that to the scope. In fact, our in-house crews can easily install those. GDOT would be in favor of such, and we would put that in at the end of the project with our crews.
I think that would be real helpful because the day after we talked about this at the last council meeting and walking past there, I think the way to make a left is going to be to go out between Salt and Taco Bell. That's what I think. And that could create a more dangerous environment than what we're trying to solve. And so I'm glad we'll be able to do something to dissuade people from making that left. So
we will do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from council at this time? All right. Seeing none, I believe we have about 34 participants. James, did we have anybody that wanted to speak on this side?
I have no hands raised, and I see no one waiting to speak at this time, sir.
All right, I'll give them just a few seconds for anyone who would like to make a public comment at this time. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion that we please award ITB 20-015 to Chattahoochee Group Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $191,983.87 for construction of the SR9 at Marietta Street Mid-Block Crossing, and authorize the mayor to execute all necessary documents.
Second.
We've got a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell, a second by Councilwoman Richard to approve ITB 20-015 State Route 9 at Marietta Street Midlock Crossing up to $191,983.87. Is there any discussion on this item?
I'd just like to thank Pete for all the work on this and his crew. We spoke earlier and he feels like the landscaping improvements there could be included in his budget already without having to up the cost, the initial cost. And this is just one more good step in making our downtown a bit more pedestrian friendly. So it's a good move for our city and our citizens.
Absolutely, thank you. Any other comments? I'll go ahead and call for a vote then. Councilwoman Richard, do you approve or not approve the motion?
I approve.
Council, approve or not approve the motion?
Did you ask me, Mr. Mayor?
I did, sir.
I'm a no.
You're a no? Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell, do you approve or not approve the motion?
I do approve. Thank you.
Councilman Binder, do you approve or not approve the motion?
I approve.
Councilman Merkel, do you approve or not approve the motion?
Approve.
Councilman Heights, do you approve or not approve the motion?
Approve.
And I do approve it as well. So it does pass on a vote of 6-1. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it, Pete. Next item up on the new business agenda this evening is the award of auditing services contract. Director Tom Harris, you have the floor.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This item is for recommending the approval of Malden and Jenkins for a term of 5 years in response to an RFP to be our provide auditing services for us. We did issue the RFP in January. 6 firms downloaded the RFP. Fortunately, we only received one response. It was from Malden and Jenkins. We did reach back out to the other firms that do auditing services for municipalities of our size. They did not provide a response. I want to tell you that Malden and Jenkins, first of all, does most cities, most counties in government in the state of Georgia. They've been with us a period of time, although the RFP is not just cost oriented. It's based on your qualifications, your expertise, et cetera, with cost only being about 10% of the response. Only thing I could somewhat rationalize is that there is a sizable, sometimes when you first take over an audit, a good amount of learning curve and cost in the early years, and based on the fees that we're currently paying Malden and Jenkins at $50,000, $52,000 a year, that they may not feel they can get that done. But in either case, Malden and Jenkins believe they were offered, in a competitive environment, and they've lowered their fees to a couple $1,000s and are below 50,000. Audit fees for 2019 were 52,000. So this is a reduced fee. I think it exceeds 52,000 in 2024. It goes to 52,500. That's it.
All right, sir. Well, thank you very much. Do we have any questions from council at this time? Seeing none. James, do we have anyone from the public who wanted to speak on this item?
We do not at this time, sir.
Thank you, sir. I'll give them a few seconds just in case anyone did. Not seeing anyone at this time, so we'll go ahead and close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I would offer a motion to approve the auditing contracts be awarded to Malden and Jenkins as presented tonight by Tom Harris.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I would second that.
All right, we have a motion by Councilman Merkel, a second by Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell. Any discussion?
Yeah, I just say quick words. I've been working with Tom and these guys for the last couple of years, and they're smooth. I mean, they're great. They know what they're doing. They know municipalities inside and out. As Tom mentioned, they do a bunch of them. It's a testament to Tom and his team, how well they work together. And the fact that they volunteered, we didn't ask for it. They volunteered to drop their fees by that $2,000 because they understand we're all kind of going through this together. So I applaud Tom and his relationship with them, and I look forward to working with them in the future.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments from council? All right, then I'll go ahead and call for the vote. Councilwoman Richard, do you approve the motion to award the auditing services contract on it as read by Tom Harris?
I approve.
Martin Jenkins, excuse me.
I approve.
Thank you. Councilman Burnett, do you approve or not approve of the motion?
Approve.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell, do you approve or not approve of the motion?
Approve.
Councilman Binder, do you approve or not approve of the motion?
I approve.
Councilman Merkel, do you approve of the motion?
I approve.
Councilman Heights, do you approve?
Approve.
And I approve as well, so that motion does pass unanimously. Thank you, Tom.
Thanks.
And Tom, don't go anywhere, because the third item on tonight's new business agenda is the resolution amending the retirement savings plan and 457 plan for certain CARES Act changes approved by the pension board. So Mr. Harris and Mr. Thomas, you have the resolution.
Good evening, Mayor and Council again. The Coronavirus Relief and Economic Security Act, otherwise known as the CARES Act, contain provisions designed to expand access to employer-sponsored retirement plans for those that are impacted by COVID-19 if certain qualifications are met. And if they do, then those distributions will not be subject to the IRS 10% penalty, withdrawal penalty. And also some provisions to waive the minimum required minimum distributions for the year for those people that apply, that they would be normally required to take a distribution this year. The pension board approved these changes to both the 457 and the 401 retirement savings plan, and that's the resolution before you as the body that actually amends the plan.
All right, sir. Mr. Thomas, would you like to go ahead and read the resolution?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. A resolution of the mayor and council of the city of Alpharetta, Georgia, to authorize CARES Act changes to the city of Alpharetta retirement savings plan and the city of Alpharetta 457 plan.
Thanks, sir. Do we have any questions from council on this item? Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell.
Thank you. This is directed at Mr. Harris. You say that the 10% is waived by the CARE Act. Is it also, did they waive the taxes, I believe at 20% on an IRA or? Yeah,
I'm more familiar with how it affected our plan, not so much on the IRA. I apologize for that, but the penalty would not be owed on the distribution.
Okay. Can we find that out before as we let our employees know?
Yeah, we can let all the employees know of all the provisions that apply.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions from council at this time? Seeing none. I'll see if there's any public comments on this item. James, do we have anyone that has raised their hand?
I have no hands raised and no comments in the chat, sir.
All right, sir. Well, thank you. We'll go ahead and close public comment then. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd offer a motion to approve the adjustment of the retirement savings plan as the 457-401 relates to the CARES Act and the changes to addressing that as presented tonight by Mr. Harrison.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Merkel, a second by Councilman Burnett to approve the resolution amending the retirement savings plan and 457 plan for certain CARES Act changes by the pension board. Are there any comments on this item?
I mean, just, the reason we brought it up was we got in compliance. Being on the pension board with Tom and Sam, we went through it and made a couple of adjustments, and we're right in line with what we need to be. It's right for our employees if they need it. I don't think too many would use it, but it is just it's a compliance issue. I think we did a good job, or they did a good job. I can show you. It wasn't me that did it, but that's where we are, and I appreciate support.
All right. If there's no other comments, I'll go ahead and call the roll vote. Councilwoman Richard, do you approve of the motion to approve the amendment to the pension 457 plan for certain CARES Act adjustments?
Yes, I approve.
Councilman Burnett, do you approve?
Yay.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell, do you approve or not approve?
I approve.
Councilman Binder, do you approve or not approve?
I approve.
Councilman Merkel, do you approve or not approve?
Yeah, I approve.
Councilman Hives, do you approve or not approve?
I approve.
And I'll approve as well. Thank you, everyone. The motion does pass unanimously. Final item on the new business agenda for this evening is the IGA with Fulton Board of Education, Alpharetta Elementary School, Inclusive and Adaptive Playground Installation. Director Rogers, let's talk about something fun.
Okay, that's right up my alley, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, council. If you recall, in March 2nd of this year, the City Council approved an intergovernmental agreement with the Fulton County Board of Education, which included a commitment by the city to provide an adaptive playground at the Alpharetta Elementary School. Working in partnership with the Board of Education and with Northside Hospital Wellness and Resurgence Orthopedics, which provided $75,000 toward this playground, with the remainder coming out of park development. We would, with the total cost of the playground, including installation, be $107,992. The playground would be used by the school during school hours, and after school hours, it would become a public park that would be available to folks in our community to use the playground. And that makes a playground close to a lot of folks that can walk to the Alpharetta Elementary School. And so we've been working on this for several years now. It's exciting to see this coming to fruition. We are asking for the approval of the contract tonight because we need to get the playground ordered in order for the installation to be done prior to the next school year, which begins in August. So we would ask for approval of the contract tonight.
Thank you, sir. And just to clarify, this is just for the intergovernmental agreement, not the purchase. That's handled separately, correct?
I'm sorry?
I said this is for approval of the intergovernmental agreement with the Board of Education, not the acquisition or the cost or the spending of the money.
No, the intergovernmental agreement's been approved. We're actually asking for the contract for the playground company to purchase the equipment, to get it ordered so that we can get it installed in time. So yeah, we're asking for the allocation for the approval of the contract.
Up to $107,000?
the 107,992.
992. Thank you. I
Yes.
didn't have that on my packet when I pulled it up. Thanks, sir. Any other questions from council at this time? Seeing none. Do we have any public comment cards on this item, James?
Mr. Mayor, I believe you need to go to Mr. Thomas first.
Ah, that's right. Okay. Mr. Thomas, you have the floor.
I'm here. I'm not sure I need the floor though. we have approved at a prior meeting. We approved the intergovernmental contract, and I think we just need to approve and accept this bid at this point to authorize the mayor to enter into the contract to acquire the playground so it can go ahead and be built. We've actually already entered into the IGA with the county.
Thank you for the clarification, sir. James, do you have any public comments? Anyone?
We do not, sir.
All right, sir. I'll go ahead and close public comment then. Do I have a motion from council at this time?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
That's quite all right. I saw you waiting.
Back and forth the agenda. I was working on it. So I would make a motion to approve the IGA with Fulton Board of Education, Alpharetta Elementary School inclusive, and adaptive playground installation for the limits of the dollars that Mr. Thomas or Mr. Morgan Rogers presented this evening. I believe it's 107 something. I don't have it on my sheet.
It was up to $107,992.
That's the number I approve.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Merkel, a second by Councilman Burnett, and to approve the IGA with Fulton Board of Education for the Alpharetta Elementary School inclusive and adaptive playground installation up to $107,992 and allow the mayor to execute all the contract. Any discussion at this time?
I do.
Councilman Binder?
Yes, sir. No, I think this is a long time coming. I was real proud of Morgan really working on this, and I know Ben Burnett's been involved on it, but this is really a great deal for us because at my core belief of why I'm here is I believe we need to have parks within a 10-minute walk from everybody, from every neighborhood. And by doing partnerships like this, it gets us to add a park to the public at very low cost. We all know how much it costs to add land, to buy land. And so whenever we can partner up with a group that has land there and we just help get partners aboard to build a playground, it's a winner for everybody. So just really at the bottom of my heart, I appreciate you, Morgan, on the work on this. And I hope we add another school to get some of the deserts, the playground deserts that we do have in the city added on and get people a place to walk to, because we definitely need it now more than ever.
Absolutely. Councilman Burnett, I believe you have a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just also would like to thank Jeff Rose and Superintendent Loney, as well as Katie Reeves, because they're people who have really gone out of their way to make us successful. And I think our schools are really what separate Alpharetta from other parts of Fulton County. So a big thank you to them, as well as our professional staff. So being able to have opportunities like this for $107,000 for residents, as Jason had said, to gain a park is just, you can't buy a better deal. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other council comments? Well, I'll just agree with both previous councilmen. This is one of those instances where governments work well together between Fulton County Schools and City of Alpharetta, and I congratulate Director Rogers on making this happen and coming up with creative ways to help finance it so that it did happen, especially for the school that has quite a heavy population of children that don't necessarily get to use all the playgrounds around Alpharetta. So thank you for everyone, and I'll go ahead and call for the vote. Councilwoman Richard, do you approve of the motion to approve the IGA up to $107,990?
Yes, I approve. That wasn't me, by the way.
Councilman Burnett.
Approved.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell, do you approve or not approve?
I do approve. Thank you.
Councilman Binder, do you approve or not approve?
I approve.
Thank you. Councilman Merkel, do you approve or not approve?
I approve, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Heights, do you approve or not approve?
I approve.
Thank you. And I will approve it as well. The motion does pass unanimously. You know, we're getting pretty good at these Zoom meetings, but man, these roll calls are killing me. Figure out a way to get our old buttons as bad as that was sometimes.
You can do it. You got this. Keep it up.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I want to interject and share my latest Zoom trick that I learned, and that is if you hold down on the space bar, it will unmute you, and then when you let off the space bar, you're muted.
There's your pro tip for the evening, ladies and gentlemen. Let's move on to the workshop portion, the final portion of tonight's agenda. And first item on the workshop agenda is the North Point Area Alpha Loop and Big Creek Greenway Trail Connectivity Feasibility Study. And I believe Donnie Zelfro has been sitting here waiting for his opportunity. So you have the floor, sir.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Mayor and council members. This is Darren Meyer, and Donnie and I will be tag teaming the presentation this evening.
Yep. Good evening, all.
Let me share my screen. All right. Is there an image of some joggers with a child in a stroller on the screen?
Yes, there is.
Yes, sir.
Great. We should be all set. We earlier this year, we kicked off an effort to study the feasibility of connecting the Alpha Loop to the North Point area and the Big Creek Greenway. And glad to be here tonight, at least virtually, to share an update with you on that project. The area that we're studying, generally speaking, is the North Point area, which you can see in this bird's eye. The Big Creek Greenway and the North Point area are in the foreground. And you can see in orange the current planned extents of the Alpha Loop. It was interesting to hear the presentation from the Georgia Tech students and the CDC earlier. You know, certainly the Alpha Loop is a great quality of life amenity, but as we heard from them, there's really a pretty wide range of benefits that trail can offer the community. I did want to add one sort of interesting reference point. We are doing some planning right now for the park system in Hamilton County, which is the Cincinnati, Ohio metro area. And they have seen almost an 85% increase in their trail usage in the past month and a half. So there's been a really interesting demand for our parks and public spaces that we've seen during this time as well. We have a great team put together to work alongside with the community and staff on this, led by MKSK. Donnie's our project manager and I'm the principal in charge. And we're partnering with Tool Design Group. Tool Design Group really is doing, I think, some of the best people first transportation planning in the country. In terms of their expertise, they're authoring the updated 2020 AASHTO guide for bicycle facilities. They are part of the GDOT pedestrian and streetscape guide, creating that guideline, as well as Cycle Atlanta, and a lot of great projects around the Atlanta area. So we're excited to have them on board to partner with us in this effort. This is a similar view to what we saw a few moments ago. In the foreground, you see the Big Creek Greenway, the green line, the 400 corridor in purple. You can see that the current Alpha Loop in orange that connects downtown, Avalon, and down to Northwind Summit, and the 360 tech developments that are being moved ahead. And the focus of our study really is from that crossing at Haynesbridge Road at 400. Along the 400 corridor, we see the dashed orange line, and down to North Point Parkway and ultimately the Big Creek Greenway. And we've sort of called this the Alpha Link to tie in that Alpha Loop to the Big Creek Greenway. And really, there's a couple great things about this link. The Alpha Loop in general is a great amenity, as we talked about, for the community, but the ability to connect it to the Big Creek Greenway really ties together two well-used and well-loved bike and pedestrian facilities in the city and in the region. And in addition, the ability to connect to the future bus rapid transit station and the 400 corridor is really important in terms of connectivity to the wider metro area. We have three areas where we're focusing that have some unique qualities to them. The first I mentioned is the crossing at Haynesbridge Road. And we're going to be looking carefully at how to make a safe and comfortable crossing there, and ultimately running along the 400 corridor up to Encore Parkway. It includes some beautiful natural areas that are around the lake, adjacent to the proposed development there and behind the Fulton Science Academy. The second area where we're focusing is along Encore Parkway, taking you across the bridge and down to North Point Parkway. Also involves a connection along North Point Center East to the mall area and to that future bus rapid transit station. And then lastly, the connection across North Point Parkway to the Big Creek Greenway. The opportunity for a great trailhead and Gateway Park at that location, which could serve a number of potential benefits. And you can see a photo on the bottom left, sort of the inspiration for what the quality of that connection could be like from North Point Parkway down to the Big Creek Greenway. We have 4 phases. The data collection analysis was our first phase. It's largely complete. Involved looking at items such as crash data, level of traffic stress, traffic counts and movements, slopes, topography, et cetera. So we've done some technical analysis. Public engagement is going to be continuous throughout the project, and Donnie's going to share with you some of the ways that we've gotten creative during the times of social distancing. Once we start to gather some input from the public, we will dive into our conceptual plan and looking at some alternatives for the alignment and the feasibility of that connection, and wrap up with our deliverables for this project. Schedule-wise, you can see the big "We Are Here" star sort of mid-spring. So we are sort of moving into our initial public engagement. And as I mentioned, we'll be starting to look at some conceptual alignments here as well over the spring and summer. And then we'll be looking to wrap that up this fall. I'm going to turn it over to Donnie to walk through our engagement process.
Yeah, as Darren mentioned, I have the privilege of talking to you all about community engagement. And especially during these times, it has been quite the interesting challenge to kind of look at and explore. Public involvement and engagement is really a fundamental part of our, planning approach, and something that we view as a critical step in making sure that the project is understood, is supported, and is really, felt to be owned by the community. And in this time of social distancing, obviously, that's made this again a little bit different, and it's really encouraged us to continue to be creative about the ways that we engage and in the ways that we include people in this process. So, really, there's 3 constituencies that we're looking to serve kind of throughout this effort, and groups that will help guide and shape this planning process. The first is the working group. So this is a small team of key City of Alpharetta and Atlanta Regional Commission staff who are really our direct kind of day-to-day points of contact for the project and the team. We're also working with elected officials, all of y'all, at various points throughout the planning process to discuss findings and feedback, and also really solicit input directly from y'all kind of as we move through some of these projective phases of the project. And really the Alpharetta community as a whole is who we're serving and who is kind of guiding us throughout this Alpha Loop feasibility study. And we're getting creative about the ways that we hear those voices and incorporate that feedback, which we'll kind of dig into in the subsequent slides. So from the start of this, just given where we're at kind of societally, project websites and social media are important ways to kind of cast a wider net through the course of our kind of planning work and our public processes more generally. So in mid-February, we launched what we were calling Vision Alpha Link. Or www.visionalphalink, is this kind of central repository and home for all things North Point area and Alpha Loop Trail connectivity feasibility study related. So folks always had a point of contact to kind of reach out to and learn about the project from. As we've seen really the impacts of COVID-19, having that digital platform available to us with some kind of recognition has allowed us to be nimble and really adapt and work what initially was planned to be a series of kind of workshops and an open house in person kind of to this digital meeting place. So we've developed a series of online activities, again, to help people kind of enter into this project and solicit feedback and share ideas in a number of different ways. To help kind of promote this, and again, to help really bring as many people kind of under the tent as we possibly could, we work with city staff to send nearly 1,500 postcards to area residents to target communications directly to kind of stakeholders in the area, as well as then, post to the city's social media platforms and website to make sure that we were really reaching as broad a cross-section of kind of folks in Alpharetta as we could through this process. So you see here some of those postcards that we sent out. And we've been really, I think, netting some incredible results from all of that hard work of staff and of us as a consultant team where, since April 22nd, when this site launched, it's been viewed at this point, the statistics you're seeing on screen are from this past Friday, but it's really been viewed almost, 1,300 times at this point. And we're nearing the kind of 200 response mark in just this short week and a half. And the online virtual public meeting is set to run for another several weeks. So we'll have the opportunity to continue promoting and continue bringing people into this process, again, to kind of share and shape our effort. As we continue moving through this, as we get beyond our kind of virtual public meeting number one and into the kind of recommendations phase of this, we'll continue to explore ways to kind of test creatively and strategically some of the ideas that are generated and look to bring people out and into safely and responsibly, given kind of the situation we find ourselves in over the coming months. But this really spectacularly beautiful and often kind of unrecognized kind of slice of land in Alpharetta. And ultimately, as we reach the conclusion of the project, we'll look to host this kind of celebration of the vision, to celebrate the hard work, the creativity of the community as a whole and coming together to, again, kind of shape this vision for the Alpha Loop and the future of the North Point area and the Big Creek Greenway.
And I would add to that, for those, that aren't able to make it out to the site during one of these events, we've had drone videography taken of the site, and are also going to have some ground level GoPro video shot as well, so that on the website, we can provide folks the opportunity to see from above and at ground level the character and quality of the site, and help provide some background for them to make informed input as well if they're not able to make it out.
No, absolutely. It's an important point, and we're at a really privileged time to have those technologies available to us, again, to kind of bring people in and be inclusive. So I'd like to take this opportunity to really, again, just encourage everyone to go to visionalphalink.com to kind of explore the project as well as participate in our virtual public meeting exercises. The exercises will be open for feedback through May 25th, so you have a few more weeks. So please tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers to go, help shape this vision. And with that, I'll pass it back over to Darren to kind of conclude.
Yeah, I think that does conclude. So I look forward to hearing the comments of council. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate you adjusting to the new realities of this and not holding up the project, because I know it's, especially after watching the earlier presentation as well, it's exciting to see. I know we've just completed that little segment along Thompson Street. So it's exciting to see this continue even under the new reality. I'll ask if any other council members have questions or comments at this time.
Mr. Mayor, this is Karen.
Councilwoman Richard, you have the floor.
Can you hear me okay?
I can. Can you hear
Okay.
me?
Yes, thank you. Darren and Donnie, I want to thank you both for this presentation. And I also want to thank the ARC because it's through their generous grant that we're in a position to be able to conduct this feasibility study. But also want to mention that I was really impressed with how quickly both the MKSK team and our staff responded when the first public outreach was canceled, obviously because of the corona pandemic. And I think that they were very flexible and moved very quickly into an environment that would still give us the opportunity to capture as much public input as possible. So I definitely commend you all for being so flexible in that. And I just want to encourage my fellow council members to take a minute to go on the Vision Alpha link. I completed the outreach, the survey, and other questions in just a few minutes. It's very user friendly, and I think that we'll get some terrific insight. As Darren said earlier in the presentation, the current environment with shelter in place, I think, has really brought home to a lot of folks how important our walking trails and parks and greenway are to our city, and how lucky we are to have the various options that we have. So I think it's going to make this feasibility study a major priority for all of us moving forward. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Richard. I believe Councilman Merkel had a comment or a question.
Yeah, I can figure this thing out. No, I just want to thank as well Darren and Donnie. And I also think that these testament to this new way of doing meetings. You guys used to have to fly in or drive in from South Carolina. Darren back in the day, Columbus, I guess. This is a great report, and it's amazing that you're able to do this and incorporate in this kind of somewhat way of doing business. So thank you guys very much. It was amazing. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the kind words.
Anything else from council at this time? Well, I'm not seeing any other questions or comments. So gentlemen, I appreciate all you're doing. Appreciate you adapting on the run, and I look forward to seeing more from you very soon.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. We'll move on to the second item on tonight's workshop agenda. That is the Development Authority Revenue Bond Application Additions. Councilmember Burnett, and I believe Matthew Thomas, our Economic Development Coordinator Manager, will be presenting this item.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before you is the Development Authority's existing revenue bond application, and there's also a modified version of the same document. I want to focus on the modified version specifically. If you look at the top of page 3, there should be a question 8, and it's really questions 8 and 9. 8 specifically asks about an applicant's desire to participate in city programs sponsoring special events, arts initiatives, and sports leagues. Question 9 takes that same approach, but specifically for participation with local schools. The goal of these 2 questions is to really help facilitate corporate social responsibility and ensure that our revenue bond applicants are aware of some of the city's opportunities for community programs. Oh, thanks, James. Are aware of some of the city's programs for community participation, and hopefully it'll allow some of our local programs to also more easily identify new corporate partners, such as companies and developments that invest in the city. Now, whether or not an applicant chooses to participate does not determine if they're granted an abatement, but rather to really help, again, identify corporate partners in a lot of the programs that our Recreation and Parks Department hosts, as well as an opportunity to participate with a lot of our local schools. So that's kind of really the purpose and intent behind it. But before proceeding, we just wanted council feedback on the additions and any recommendations regarding these changes.
Thanks, sir. Do we have any questions or comments from council? Councilman Markle.
I think this is excellent. I applaud Councilman Burnett and Matthew for putting it in there. It certainly is an opportunity for the business community coming into our community, the business world coming into our community, to see that they have an opportunity to get connected. I believe Mr. Mayor and Matthew reached out to over 50 businesses last year to say, hey, we just want to let you know we're here. We want to know if you need anything, if you know how to get connected. And I think the common response was, we're businesses. We just show up and do business. We were not really community connected. And I think there was a lot of appreciation. I'll let you guys speak to that. I'm not taking that from you. But I do think it's great to put these 2 questions on there that says, hey, do you want to become, connected to the city and different organizations here? Do you want to be connected to the schools? I think it's a great step. I really appreciate you guys. I never would have thought of this, so that's pretty cool. Thank you.
Councilman Burnett.
Yeah, thank you for those words, Councilmember Merkel. My intent here was obviously not to put teeth in it, but also to give Morgan and Amanda the opportunity to know, look, we had Toyota come last month. Had they sought some sort of tax preferential treatment, and we're glad they didn't, but if they had chosen to do that, it would be really interesting to be able to grow their brand and the relationship with us. And in conjunction, there was a lot of opinions earlier in the year around the development authority down at the General Assembly being able to just carte blanche write tax abatements here without any say towards schools or the local municipality. And while we can't really change the law, we can certainly pose a question. And I think most of the people who come in here and want to spend 20, 30, 50, 100, $200 million, the answer to that is yes. You look at our community partners out there today, there are a lot of people that are going to be coming to the Development Authority with projects over the next year or so that have been really financially impacted. So to be able to give back and give them the opportunity to partner with us, the socially conscious city, really, to me, stands out. And I hope that this is something that the rest of the cities in Fulton County really take a look at, because giving, you can't expect to give away the cow when you get the milk for free. So it's really difficult to have something like this. And I do believe that it's the right step to take. Alpharetta is by no stretch last chance money. Our tenants can lease up, in the mid 40s per square foot. So to be able to leverage that and to pour some more money into our parks programs and to be able to ask the question with regards to the school system was really my intent. So I appreciate you saying that, Dan. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from council? Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell.
Thank you. And Ben, I'd like to thank you for your work on this. I think for a long time in Alpharetta, we have sought to gain the kind of businesses and corporations that want to be a partner in our city and not just reap the benefits of being here, but also become partners with us and to help our citizens along the way. This is a great concrete way to achieve that. And tonight it seems so apropos that it's comes forward on a night when we've been talking about the Alpha Loop and all the opportunities there where we can have naming rights after a corporation or whatever to provide needed assets to our citizens, and so many other ways that our corporate partners can contribute to the community and be a part of it. So thank you for bringing this forward.
Thank you, sir. Is there any other comments or questions from council at this time? Matthew, do you think you got enough direction at this point?
All clear, sir. Thank you all.
Sounds good. I do appreciate the opportunity to open up a conversation with people that are locating their businesses here in Alpharetta. So that's the workshop on Development Authority Revenue Bond application, and we'll move on to item C, which is the final workshop item, and that's presentation and discussion of the recommended fiscal year 2021 budget, operations and capital. Director Harris, you have the floor once again.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is our first presentation formally of the recommended fiscal year 2021 budget. In your agenda packet is the budget excerpt that I think goes up through page 70 plus of the budget document, which is available on the web. And we also have hard copies here. If you need one, just let me know. We have binders in my office on the budget. But that excerpt contains the narratives and the operating initiatives, capital initiatives, and then the general budget summary, financial summary. But James is now controlling the presentation that you do not have, but I can get this available to you. But it is just, we're going to tonight talk about pretty much similar to what we've done in the past. The agenda here is to talk about how we got to where we got to, and then we generally going to talk about our homestead exemptions, and then the 2021 budget, a little bit into the detail, and then the operating and capital initiatives we'll probably touch on to some extent, and leave it open for further meetings to get deeper into both those initiatives, and then the calendar. So the next slide on slide 3, really it's the typical process. We start in retreat. February, March, we produced a balanced budget. We thought we were ready to go forward. Started working with the mayor, and this wonderful March 13th that will live with us for some time was the national emergency of COVID. So from that, I got to say that Sean and department heads and everybody, you know, Sean's the GOAT, and department heads have done a great job at getting back in, looking at their budgets. Just to give you an idea, and we'll talk about this in a minute, it was about a $4.3 billion reduction in revenues from March 12th through to March 14th. So the budget for you has that kind of impact of reduction in revenues. But now the mayor has had a chance to review recommended initiatives that departments were making. And as I mentioned, we did produce that document. So let me start with slide 5 on the taxpayer savings. Again, our homestead, just to recap us a little bit on our homestead, is over $5 million annually. And that equates to about 1.2 mils in our city compared to other cities around us that don't offer as much in the homestead exemption arena. The floating homestead exemption, we are in our second year of that. We will see what the digest reflects, but of course we won't see the digest most likely until late June. And if at all this fiscal year, maybe at the early of next year. But we'll talk about our projections on that. But remember that caps the growth on the homesteaded properties to the lesser of 3% or the CPI. And that's probably $2 million of that $5 million in savings. In November, our residents, taxpayers voted for the homestead exemption to be increased from 40 to 45,000. That impact of about 300,000, which is good for the homeowners, it saved them 300,000. The impact of that 300,000 is reflected in this budget that's before you. At that same time, the senior homestead exemption, which for senior exemption, it's 65 years of age. It used to be 15,000 and then another 10,000 senior exemption if you were 65 and older and you had some income restriction. That's been combined to just a senior exemption of 25,000. That had about a $60,000 tax savings. And lastly is a senior full exemption that we've had that is available to residents 70 and older who meet certain income requirements. So with that, we'll go to the next page. It's sort of on one page, tries to, or pretty much on one page, tries to summarize the budget before you. We are balanced at 74.5 million. That's the general fund. That's primarily what we're going to spend most of our energy on. To the right, you will see the operating in debt millage rates proposed and their dollar impact. 2020, the operating being 4.82, it's recommended it goes to 4.935, picks up about 600,000 from the debt side, the debt gives up about 700,000. The reason their numbers don't exactly equate is that there's more the homestead exemptions applied to the operating. So when you move millage rate there, you lose a little bit of the revenues that you otherwise would be getting from the debt side. But the debt millage, remember, we just did a bond refunding and saved about 392,000, maybe $400,000 a year of that 700,000 is because we refunded debt at lower interest rates, and that saved it. The remaining 300,000 is due to property value growth that we're projecting in our property tax digest that with level debt and the debt service fund, we won't need to have that additional 300,000. So combined, the debt fund can give up 700,000 and therefore can lower its millage rate of 0.115 mils and move that over to the general fund. So the next, and as far as operations, the class and comp study, that's been an initiative probably well over a year and a half, maybe 2 years. The actual study got started in this past fiscal year. I think we're waiting for the director to come on board, et cetera. And there's been a view all along, probably back 2 years, that employees, when we compare them to the comparable municipalities, and in this case, the study has looked at 20 comparable municipalities, that we are a little bit behind possibly. So that study is getting into its final stages. I don't want to get too much in detail, but some preliminary results indicate that we may be in a couple, 3-4% below market in certain positions on average for a good group of our employees, probably 270 out of our 400 plus employees may need to be looked at to bring a little more closer in line with market. So the impact of that is roughly 620,000. That's included in the operating budget. Next, we have a one-time compensation payout that's included in the budget. That's in lieu of the merit program. That is a $1 million that does not increase the salary of an employee or the ongoing pay of that employee. One-time compensation that does not add to the base of that employee. And remember, we did not give a merit program on this past April 1st. And so the concept here is to provide a one-time fund to provide some compensation to employees. That is coming from fund balance. We'll talk about it a little bit more about that. That's an okay use for a one-time payment, and that's been included in the budget. The merit program for 2021 for about $250,000 is a recommended operating initiative that, again, we're going to talk about initiatives in a minute as well. The budget is balanced with freezing of 7 positions, no public safety or essential positions through next fiscal year. 4 of them are in public works, 1 in finance, 1 in courts, and 1's a parking enforcement officer in public safety. The next, we'll see this a little bit better on some slides. There was a -6% reduction. That's after accounting for certain things that have to go up that we don't have a lot of control over, as utilities, legal fees, and some of the services for providing some of our landscape maintenance for Rucker Road, et cetera. So again, we'll dive a little more into that thing. So next is slide 7. Make sure I'm not getting lost here. On the capital side, this is the general fund's contributions to fund annual capital. And as you recall, it comes from 2 primary sources. One is our fund balance. Fund balance is your savings account, how well you did the year before, that amount that's above our emergency reserve. And so that number that's going over to capital is 4.4. Let me give you a little recap on what that really was. We finished last year in our CAFR annual financial report at about 7.3 million of available fund balance beyond our emergency reserve. That normally would be funding a capital program. But at mid-year this year, we took 2 million and we funded some investment initiatives, the parks, bathrooms, I think Vaughn and a few other items that we've just recently reallocated or unappropriated back down to unallocated. But I'm just giving you a history of the fund balance. We took 2 million and threw that into capital. And then, as I mentioned, we used approximately 1 million, it's a little bit less, 936,000 to pay for the one-time compensation payouts. So 7.3 of fund balance at the end of the year comes down to 4.4. And that's that 4.4 is going over to pay for capital. The other source of funds for paying for a lot of our capital, especially our recurring capital, comes from a line item in the general fund budget. And this is at 3.2 million this year. It was, you'll see in a minute, I think in a slide or two, that it was in 2020, it was budgeted at 4.8 million because of COVID and the trade-off with some of the other initiatives, as I've mentioned, that are in the budget, including a general reserve we're going to talk about in a minute. That recurring capital has been decreased to 3.2. From a cash perspective, although that line item, and it's a budgeted item similar to supplies, everything that's been cut by 30%, from a cash funding the recurring capital, we'll see in a minute, because we've reappropriated dollars, because we took some fund balance at the middle of this year. Last year, I think the mayor actually took $2 million to put towards milling and resurfacing as we went into the 2020 budget. Well, so we do have other dollars that have tried to supplement the recurring project, but I did want to mention that the recurring line item is now at 3.2 million. But the operating initiative reserve we talked about, there's 276,000 set aside primarily for, at this point in the mayor's proposed budget, to cover the 3% merit potentially at April 1 of 2021. And then we ultimately are left with $1.1 million in a general reserve in the general fund to sort of give us some cushion and buffer on if revenues don't come in as we expect. So that is the operating side of the general fund on a big picture. That on slide 8 feeds into, on a big picture, the capital projects analysis. So what you see here is we have quite a bit of reserves that are going to be set up. There is 12.7 of recommended capital. And why this chart works is you've got the actual funds themselves, the capital project fund, that's the general capital program that we have in the city. Then we have one that we've set aside specifically for stormwater, and we have T-Splosh, and as you know, we have impact fee funds. So the available fund balance is the dollars that are in those respective funds. That's unallocated dollars that are there in the fund. The big number in the 4.1 million, that only had about $1 million prior to the action the council took a few week or two ago when we staff brought forward all the capital projects. And the council was requesting, the mayor and council was requesting, is there some dollars that could be unappropriated? So that we moved about over $3 million. Again, the park restrooms, Lily Garden, the Hopewell at Vaughn, and pretty much what was presented was moved out. And it's the same as some in stormwater, et cetera. So those are the fund balances. T-Splosh is really something we're going to have to deal with when we look at the big picture of the total 5-year program and where we stand with those projects. And so a lot of it stays in reserves until Pete's bringing forward items, but we still need to start planning the full use of that $50+ million 5-year program. But back on the next funding source is the general fund transfer. This goes back to the if you look to the far right, 4.4 million, 4.352 million. That was what I was just mentioning, the available fund balance from the general fund. After we had the 7 million fund balance, we used $1 million for this, we took 2 million here. That's coming from the general fund of 3.9 to the capital project fund, 411 into stormwater. And then we have the 3.2 million, that is the line item of the general fund for recurring capital program, split between 1.7 million going to the capital project fund and 1.489 going to the stormwater capital project fund. So that's the 3.2 recurring program that was 4.8 the year before. So that's our funding sources primarily. You get over in the far right, you'll see other sources. That's the LMIG grant estimate of 600,000 that helps provide for some of the milling and resurfacing. And then ultimately, you have the details of what was recommended in the capital for each of these funds in your in the budget excerpt, and we will flash a few slides up in a minute regarding them as well. But at the end, it provides a significant reserves as we continue to take a look at all our needs and in light of the COVID and keeping some dollars back from prioritization for our capital program that we have in the general capital fund. About 3.6 million would now be in this proposed budget is quote unquote unallocated. So that's a high level again, and I'll probably go in the wrong direction. We go to slide 10 and we're getting into, I'm not going to go too much into this. It's just, we have to show the big picture that it's a $145 million budget. The FTEs, full-time equivalents, are down those 6.5 positions, as I mentioned earlier. They're down at the bottom right. The big giant blue is the general fund. At most, the majority of where we're going to spend our time is paying for all of our police, fire, et cetera, and public works and general operations. Those positions primarily are where the FTEs are down as well. So next, if you go from that side around clockwise, the next is special revenue funds. That's your DEA fund, your drug seizure fund, E91 fund, impact fee fund, the hotel motel fund. We'll talk about that in a minute. That was a fund that the revenues, the 8 pennies, were going to generate about 9.2 million. They were on pace to do that. We're now going to project about a 25% to 25% haircut on that, and it will only be generating about 6.75 million. And that's all the 8 pennies. Then that's split up, and the general fund gets a piece, the ACVB gets a piece, and the other piece stays to make the convention center bonds. So that's that. The debt service fund, that is where we pay for the GO bonds. That's under $5 million a year of annual debt service. Again, we picked up $390,000 on that debt service payment by refunding those bonds. Capital project funds, we're going to get in all that. That's the other big piece that makes up the majority is all the T-SPLOST and all the monies we just saw in that capital program. It's the 38 million of new allocable dollars going towards a capital program. The enterprise fund is your solid waste residential curbside. We did see a slight increase under our contract with them. As you all know, we talked about at the retreat, and likewise in July 1, we will be recouping that in a increase on our rates to be able to keep that fund afloat. And then the next is our internal service funds. That's pretty much where we run our medical claims and our risk management out of. And then those charges go right back to the general fund. In the world of government, we love to sort of duplicate things. We don't really have probably 145 million of true expenses that leave the door. Some of them are double counted because we want to create funds, and funds like in our world is so we can manage the operation. So there are 2 internal service funds, one being for health, medical insurance, and the other is for all of our property casualty, workers' comp, liability insurance. Last is our fiduciary funds, which is our OPEB, post-employment health benefit funds. Primarily not a lot of changes in any of those funds. That's why we're going to dive into the general fund. And so slide 11. Okay, so every time I look at this, I have to breathe, a couple times over. But it can be shocking numbers, both positive and negative, because sometimes what we forget to understand is when we have compare a budget to a budget, we may have been really under budgeting in a line item. So when you try to think of a COVID impact or something as we go through this, you may see some numbers. Wow, I think it's going to be worse than that. And it may be, but I need to try to give some understanding of what is really what was on pace for that amended budget. And we're now absorbing into the 2021 draft budget. But good news is, at least we think we've made no changes pre-COVID to post-COVID on our property taxes, because if things follow the way they're supposed to, those valuations were based on December 31st or January 1, so all activity from last year. And so that's about $1,745,000. 600,000 I mentioned was from the swap of the millage rates, over to the remaining 1.1 million, 150, is just growth between the residential going up not more than 3%, and commercial going up in new construction. So I think that's about probably, after you take out the new construction impact, probably on average 3 to 4%. So it's a little over that when you have the new construction that we anticipated based on Kathy's numbers and stuff of what we'll see in new construction. I would think that will hold through for this year. I do want to make a caution, because I'm probably going to get asked this as we look forward to 2022. Residential again, I don't know how much that would change after post-COVID or during this next few months of COVID. And it's capped at 2% to 3% anyways. It's on the commercial side that makes up 60% of this digest value. That, just to put it in perspective, as you go into 2022, if that number was to see a 9% decrease in the commercial valuations. To give you an understanding, in the recession, first year after recession, it dropped 6%, and then it moved towards a 12% drop over a 4-year period in on the commercial side of things. It's not too unreasonable to think that 9 could be hit. If 9 was hit, you would lose all that potential growth on the residential side of 2 or 3, plus use up $1 million of this number. So going into 22, you would see that us fall back to almost a 2000. It's potential that you could see us go back to the 2020 property tax number. And I'm not trying to be gloom and doom going forward. It's just something we have to, as we go through this year. And I should have mentioned, this is, it's a budget document. It's the best we know now. I think it tries to cover some very important initiatives that have been on for a period of time. But we're probably going to be working continuously close hand to hand, more than we ever have over the next year, to continue to modify and make any adjustments in our operations. And we're committed to do that. But then, so after that number, a lot of these things are, for example, the motor vehicle title fee is up 500. That's nothing to do with COVID. The number is on pace to be well over $1.6 million this year. Not well over, probably $1.7 million or $1.75 million this year, because that distribution between municipalities and the state, or local and the state, went up about 30% July of this past year. We used to only get 51% of the pie. Local share now goes to 65. And it's a convoluted concept, but at the end of the day, we are doing extremely well in that number. So that is an impact. We don't really have any material data yet of whether or not sales of vehicles and retitling of vehicles through sales is going to change that much. I would assume it will drop, but we just don't have any data on how much that would drop. Local option sales tax, that's what we probably all been, focusing on. I've tried to look at things from the Fiscal Research Center of Andrew Young School and get an idea of what they're projecting for the state, and took a shot at, at what we think we're seeing there. But again, it's important to keep in mind that it looks like it's only, on paper here, a 4.6% drop. But we were on pace to make 17.4 million easily this year. So plus you would normally grow going into next year. Well, then that 15.7 that we're showing for the numbers, more like a 10% drop. And so just to give that in perspective, the way, and this is why we're all, sort of use the adage that's on every commercial now we see, we're all in this together. I'm assuming that on the local sales tax, if we were at 75% in July 1 of this year, and we move towards getting back to 90% by January, and then finish out at 95% of what local option sales taxes, and that's just one model that I'm just trying to illustrate, that is sort of how that number 15.7 would come. If it gets worse than that, and we don't believe, or as the months go on, and it's not going to get to 90% by January, then we'll understand it. But I just wanted to put that in perspective of what that number and how it is somewhat based. And then the other numbers, pretty much, again, a little bit is just by budgets being off, or a little bit. We really get into the next big one is charges for services at $886,000 down. As we know, that's primarily about 500 or 1,000 of it is 500 to 600,000 is parks and recs through their fee programs, et cetera. And likewise on the expenditure side, there are probably 3/4 of that $500,000 or $600,000 is cut on the expenditure side, because we won't be paying out instructors, et cetera. So, and I do owe you, I'll get it out tomorrow, a sort of a recap post for all the revenues expense, sort of the pre-COVID, post-COVID, but specifically even on the parks and rec, sort of the net impact of the revenues versus and the expenses on that. But that's that big number. The next being the real big one again is the hotel motel fund. That's down 23%. It's closer to like to 27% when you look at how we were estimating to come in greater than 3.3 million. Now, again, this is our 3 pennies. So our 3 pennies would have generated 3,450,000. Again, that's about a 27% drop. Give you an example on that. The RevPAR, the revenues these hotels are making between the drop in their occupancy and then their average room rates, they're probably at, I think, 13 out of what they used to make 90 or 100. So almost at 15% of revenues currently that they would otherwise be making right now. That's how vacant they are, et cetera. But if we assume they could get 10% in July, hopefully better than that, 15 to 20%, and up towards 95% by January 1, then again, that's the number here. If it turns out where, they stay at 15, 20 for too long a period of time and aren't able to get that back to 90, 95% by January 1, then that number could be short. But again, we have $1 million that is sitting in reserve to sort of buffer or cushion some of that. So the 1.1 can be misleading because if you just took some of these positive bumps out of the way, and because we're trying to make it look like we don't just run sky falling if we believe we have other revenues that were coming in and we just weren't accurate on the budget. But if you just looked at the COVID type impacts, they're probably over 10% in total revenues when you take out property taxes as well, because they don't have an impact this year. So the next is a little bit more detail on the expenditure on slide 12. Okay, so the big one being personal services. The variance, we're up about 2.1%. That includes the projected impact of the class and comp of 620,000, includes approximately the 1 million one-time compensation. So that would have meant we normally would expect that line to at least be up $1 million, $1,620,000. But what the 2020 amended budget had $250,000 for a pay raise on April 1st of this fiscal year that we did not do. So you got to take that into consideration. And then we have over $400,000 from frozen positions. So you're only up $970,000 on that line item. There's also health insurance and stuff that came in at about 7% greater. We bid that out against other carriers, and Cigna is still provided us with the best on that. Next is base M&O accounts. We try to break it out so that we could pull out the things that we know have impacts individually and really had, I don't want to say no control over, but they are what they are, so that we could see the impact to the M&O budget. The base M&O budget is down about 802,000. 250 to 300,000 is parks for instructors. Travel and training is cut by 180,000. About 165,000 in supplies and small equipment. So we work with departments. We set new targets for them. They met those targets. They came back with everything to get. We got at 802,000 again, line item cut there, about 6.3%. After that, their elections is down because we were sort of on our own last year and wasn't part of a countywide election. So therefore we got hit with some costs. This year, the budget, the November will be part of a countywide. So we'll be able to pick up 150,000 on that line item. The rest are things that we just, legal services has gone up a bit. Utilities is up a bit, et cetera. So at the end of the day, we're still cutting 544,000 from a budget to budget perspective. And we get all the way down That's pretty much it from the total operating expense. We get down to the bottom. You can see a little bit about, we've set aside 276,000 for operating initiatives in the draft budget. There's a reserve of $1.1 million, again, setting aside to cover the revenues. The transfer, recapping it again, that the fund balance is just a myriad of how much capital, how much fund balance you bring into the general fund. I told you that we had 7.3, but we did 2 at mid-year, and then we used $1 million to cover the one-time payment. So we end up with 4.3 feeding our capital program. But the line item budget for recurring capital, it went from 4.8, 3.2. Again, the trade-off being some of the other initiatives and creating an allocated reserve, and the fact that we are sitting on some cash in those respective capital project funds. So that's that piece, page 12. So with that, on the operating initiatives, I'm just, these are them, as I mentioned, that has a merit program in as a operating initiative. It has not been plugged into the individual departments' projections at this point in time, but it is a line item in the budget to cover 250. There's also a web desk software that IT has been requesting, and I think it's a legacy system they're on now that's not really holding up to what their needs are. So those were the initiatives that are right now funded. And then there's again, these are in your document, they're in the budget document and in the attachments, and all the write-up is on them as well. If we can flip through the other operating initiatives, but they're in your handouts as well, and we can answer questions on them. That's slide 15 and stuff. So those are not funded. If we go to slide 17, again, that's sort of a recap of what I've already talked about as far as the capital project, stormwater, and all the funding sources, and how much is left at the bottom line in reserves for the non-allocated for those funds. And then the typical process again, we can dive into these more. You have on our slides, if we give you a copy of this, it has the page numbers, but in the document itself, you get a write-up of each of those initiatives, et cetera. And so I'm not going to dive into them. And again, all the remaining slides after this are unfunded capital. You get your recommended, James, if you keep cruising through and flipping them. And then you get the unfunded capital and those budget document pages too. And lastly is the calendar on slide 26. And these are just tentative dates, trying to follow the current calendar of our council meetings. Obviously, we can have more meetings and meet anytime, and that we do expect. We're looking to try to have the first readings on June 1st and June 15th, and then the final, on the readings on June 22nd. So that's the tentative plan. Obviously, it can adjust as we go along. That's all I have, and open it up for questions.
Thank you, Tom. And before I turn it over to questions, I just wanted to thank you and your staff once again. You know, since I was elected a couple of years ago, we've been through 3 budget cycles, and not a single one of them has given you solid numbers to work with. And so first we had the tax assessment fiasco a couple of years ago, and then we didn't have any clarity on last year's budget until after you had already come through with a good projection. And we thought we might move into this budget cycle on a regular scale, and it didn't happen. All of a sudden we hit a pandemic and everything hits the fan. So I know that everybody's been working their tails off in finance and trying to start over from scratch. I appreciate all you've done. I appreciate you working with me. And I appreciate the workshop that we had a week or so ago with the rest of council to help me sit through all the recommendations from our staff. I tried to be true to the points that we were making and that most of you made when we had these discussions before, is that there's so much uncertainty that it was probably a good idea to pull back as much dedicated funding until we had a little more clarity. As you can see from the operating initiatives I recommended, they were minor. I think we do need to continue to take care of our people, and what that looks like we'll discuss over the coming weeks and couple of months. But I thought it was important to keep the organization healthy and to keep as much powder dry as we can so we can make more educated decisions, because I do believe in 2, 3, 6 months, we're going to have much more clarity on how realistic the projections are. And we'll have a better idea of some of the other things that are outstanding with T-Splosh that's up for renewal and things like that. So it is just a recommended budget. I think it's good as far as the priorities we have, but I'll open up the floor for any questions y'all have, and we'll continue to work together to get there. I believe, James, who had raised their hand? I think Councilman Burnett had hit me up on the chat for a question. Councilman Burnett, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Clearly, with businesses in a, as challenging a time as they're going to see, Tom, what do you, if we were to alter the operating portion of the millage rate, what's the most that we could safely do?
Any pauses?
I heard your answer.
From a pure budget standpoint, at play is, unless you make any other changes to the budget, is that there's $1 million set aside for revenue shortfalls. So you could argue, well, if they all felt confident in all the other revenues, then you could maybe give up that $1 million. I can't, as I look to the next year though, I find it really difficult to imagine lowering the millage rate at all on the operating side, taking full advantage of the swap just to provide this budget. I think as we learn more, I'm probably not as conservative as I used to be on some of these revenues, only because we've been hit with this so fast to try to come up with a game plan. So I hope I'm answering that. I really don't think it's, unless we can find operational cuts, operational changes, significant ones in our budget, I don't think we can take the avenue of lowering the millage rate on the general fund side.
Do you mind pulling your presentation back up, James? I'm putting you on the spot here. I don't know that if it wasn't that I didn't see this, I don't think I missed it. And I just wanted to take a look at what you recommended to be unfunded, just because you scrolled so fast that I can't believe.
On the operating, on the unfunded operating initiatives would be slide 15. We have to keep an eye on the Quint initiative.
And I recognize that Mr. Mayor, we have it's early, but setting aside money for our people, which you have done, is, I know it's important to you. I think it's never fair to say for all of us, but I think it's fair for all of us that we take care of them. But for me, it's with respect to that Quint, if there is, that's something that I would, and I recognize this is later conversations, but if that's something that we can squeeze in and potentially start allocating money towards, nothing to me is more important than keeping people safe. And I think most of us feel that way. So that's enough for me on that one. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from council? I'll try to. Councilwoman Richard, I see your finger there. I only had a few of your pictures in front of me, so if anybody was missed, please let me know. But Councilwoman,
Thank
Richard, you have the floor.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tom, if you, I'm not sure what slide it was, but it was early on in the PowerPoint that you were going through, where you were speaking about the 7.3 million fund balance that we had and the mid-year adjustments that we made. And you referenced I think something towards compensation. Can you find that slide again? I don't have a copy of the presentation. Otherwise I'd give you the page number.
Yeah, well, I'm looking to see if there's there's two spots where I brought it up. So I wanted to,
I think it might be the next slide.
yeah,
you spoke about what we did at mid-year. Did I hear you say that there was some funds allocated towards like 936,000 towards compensation?
correct. As was mentioned in one of the early slides, but even prior to that, as far as the big giant overview there, you'll see that the budget does include a one-time payout, approximately 1 million, it's like 930,000. That was funded from, that in this budget is funded from the fund balance carryover 2019. So yes, we had about 7.3 million available in our CAFR. And this is sort of, I think I really got into it on slide 7, James. And that 7.3, it's not on here. I'm just telling you some numbers. At mid-year, we did $2 million for items. And so we actually took some of that savings early in the fiscal year 20-year mid-year item. We took some of that for good causes, for Vaughn, et cetera, which by now we have unwound and they stayed in that fund over in those respective funds. But the general funds piece of that is now down to 5.3. And then it gave, in this budget, it's giving up $1 million to fund the one-time compensation. So it's got 4.4 to fund capital.
Great, thank you. That helps. I missed it earlier. I through it, so thank you for the clarification.
No, thank you.
Councilman Binder, I see a finger.
There we go. I couldn't figure out my mute button again. Tom, can you pull up the revenue comparison? Or James?
James, slide 11. We rather just prepare.
Yeah, there we go. I appreciate you going over it today. It kind of helped out because that negative 1.1% budget cut on the revenues seems pretty small. But when you look at comparison of the amended budget versus draft budget, some of the things that you're making, some of the things you're saying make sense. But my question to you, there's been plenty of articles coming out between City of Atlanta, State of Georgia, even county, the school districts, of budget cuts on the revenues and what they're seeing. Have you seen any preliminary numbers of what they're showing for their budgets? I think some of them have a similar calendar to us.
I have not specifically looked at their budgets. And again, when it gets repeated in newspaper, it's the same thing. You never know exactly what it is. On one hand, we actually are, I guess, fortunate in regards that our estimated revenues for 2020 were going to be plus 3 million greater than this number. Now, to be honest, that means it's being absorbed in this COVID or this budget to respond to that. So the budget won't look like much, but we're sort of utilizing or using all that surplus of how this year would have actually shaped up. Yeah, we sort of, as each day goes on, we sort of wonder how long this thing's going to go. So that's why I wanted to bring some of the methodology on the two big numbers, which is hotel, motel, and local option sales tax. I think the other things will, sort of fall from there. And the property taxes,
Yep.
Again, if they're budgets, now if they're municipalities, it's one thing. The state doesn't have the property taxes we have as a percent of the budget. So that gets confusing. Our property taxes are, in this case, giving us a 7.4% growth. So that gets confusing down at the bottom line. But we're going to continue to look at it. Like I did mention, I did try to look at some research that was done by Andrew Young, state on the state impact revenues, and tried to translate that to, how long this thing would last. But that's the other thing. As we go each week, we all are sort of starting to see, wow, are people really going to flood back into the restaurants? Are they really going to go, what does it mean that you turn it on? What does turn on, how fast? And as I mentioned, this is I think the mayor has mentioned, it's a plan, it's a budget book based on the best we know now. And we need to be nimble, but we're going to be working towards continuing, even if this sounds a solid budget. I think Mr. Regis's leadership has always been, we're going to be looking at our budgets operationally, continue to look, because we could have a round two. Even if all these numbers came right, there could be another impact. So we just have to continue to be prepared to make adjustments.
Yeah, I completely understand, and I think I was telling the mayor earlier this afternoon that I can't believe I'm going to say this, but this is maybe definitely the first and hopefully only time that I'm going to tell you that I wish you were more conservative on the revenue side. So, but I do understand, and I appreciate the fact that you're taking a foot out there right now, and I really haven't seen any numbers at the state level or city of Atlanta of what they're having on projections. So I understand what you're doing. I know that they're talking about a 10%, comparing to a 10% sales tax decrease, and you got negative 4.6. But it's a good start. I just maybe would like to consider the options if we took a more conservative approach in the revenues.
The sales tax will be down. I did want to mention the sales will be down 10% from what we easily would have estimated this year. So,
yeah,
from what we were collecting, we're going to be down 10%. Is my budget.
Yeah.
But you're right. It doesn't give a lot of cushion to make sure better than that, in that we have fund balance 2 years from now. No, we've probably eaten into some of that conservative nature just by the nature of trying to balance against COVID,
Yeah. And then on that, can you show the expenses?
Yeah.
So on the same one too, I'd like to see it, and I'll dig more, and I knew we were going to go a little bit more top level at the negative 3.2 and where we are on that, and if really that's other options, if we can even deeper on non-personnel operation costs. And the reason is I just want to know, and if we have to go further, the recession goes a little bit longer into the end of the year, and we have to make further cuts. I'd rather cut early on some of these operational expenses early, so it can save deeper cuts later on. So in other words, battening the hatches a little bit tighter. Again, I know what you're doing right now. It's just the first step forward, and I really haven't seen anything else from other municipalities or other governments on their budgets along the same timeline. So I think this is a good first step, but I just would like to understand a little bit more on that exponential number.
Okay.
Anything else from council? I'm not seeing any other hands raised at this point. Okay. Well, I do appreciate your point and your questions. This is a process. This certainly wasn't something I expected us to just rubber stamp and move forward with at any point. There's just so many moving parts, and it's up to the 7 of us to work with our staff and figure out those priorities, because nothing that any of you have mentioned is wrong, because we don't know where we'll be in 6 months. And if we need more powder to stay dry, then we need to look for it. We just got to try to balance it, because there are a lot of needs in our community right now too. And we've got a lot of businesses that we'll need to support. And so hopefully we'll figure it out in the next couple of months and get it as close to perfect as we can. So if there's no other questions or comments at this point, please continue, my fellow council members, to reach out to me with any questions, asking me about, perhaps why I suggested this rather than that, and let me know the changes that are in your minds, and we'll be going through that whole process over the next couple of months. That being said, if there's no other comments, we'll go ahead and close this particular workshop for now and move on to the public comment portion of tonight's meeting. James, do we have anyone who has asked to speak in public comment tonight?
No, sir, we do not.
All right, sir. We'll go ahead and close public comment then. Do we have any reports this evening? I saw Councilwoman Richard, and I believe Councilman Merkel was right after her.
You gotta change your mute.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Is that better?
Much.
Thank you. Just wanted to thank Community Development, Kathy Cook, particularly for the work that she has done in regards to the temporary permit application for giving our retailers and restaurant owners some flexibility with their outdoor space. I think she finalized that on Friday. We had our first restaurant owner apply for it Friday afternoon, and I know James is going to be promoting it on social media over the next couple of days. But I want to thank her for taking that forward. I think that'll give our business owners some flexibility over the next 90 days to create an atmosphere that's comfortable for our residents and business owners.
Great point. Thank you. Councilman Merkel.
As one of 3 past presidents of the Alpharetta Rotary Club and one of 4 members of the Rotary Club currently, I would just like to report that the Alpharetta Rotary Club, as Mayor Gilman's giggling because he knows exactly what I'm going to say, so the other ones. Over the last 2 weeks, the Alpharetta Rotary Club ran a fundraiser based on the traditional Derby, Kentucky Derby, which didn't happen Saturday, but we created our own Derby. And in that process, raised almost $105,000. Higher, John? Okay, I'll go with higher, John. 105 plus for local charities and community organizations in the city of Alpharetta. This is the community gaining ground together to make a difference. We really looked at this thing and said, is this really the time to start begging people to donate money to help the local charities and communities? And we got one group that raised money through Steve Beecham to do donations to cooks and waiters and waitresses in the community that are out of money, that they're just lost out on payroll and tips and everything else. So I'm just giving a big props as the past president of 2013-14 we did an amazing job as a group and an organization and raised that kind of money. That's unheard of. I don't know if any other community's done anything like it. So I want to give a shout out, and I would like to give John Hypes and Jason Binder and Jim Gilvin a chance to put their 2 cents in on what I just said, because I think it's important.
Absolutely. And had fun. I've never seen so many people come together and have so much fun doing so much good for the community in something that was just created a few weeks ago, actually. It was remarkable.
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump in. I think for those folks who have never participated in a civic club, it can be a Rotary, a Lions, or a Kiwanis club. There's a little bit of, what's that all about? This is what it's all about. It's just a bunch of local business people who get together and we meet weekly And these civic clubs garner support from the community for the community. And I've just never been more proud of this Rotary Club. It's $108,000 starting on April 8th is what we raised. And, you know, Jason was leading the charge for the Drake House. And I mean, that's where the rubber hits the road. That's the folks who actually can benefit by these dollars in these hard times where people need a hand up. So way to go.
And that'll lead us right to Councilman Binder.
Yes, sir. No, I'd like to add on to that. The Rotary did a great job, and it kind of was ended up being a pre-party for Giving Tuesday. So a lot of the nonprofits around here and Georgia all around, they're having the next 24 hours on Tuesday having a fundraiser, and they really need the support of the community. So I would urge people to take a look at it, and hopefully we can go social media just to put more awareness on it, that people select their biggest nonprofits that they'd like to support, whether it's ones that help out with homelessness, there's counseling. We all know that mental health is a huge issue right now while everybody's by themselves in shelter in place, and addiction and recovery and those kind of things. So would hope that people take an opportunity to look there and see what they can do to donate. If not, donate their time. I know United Way has ways to volunteer right now. They're asking for blood. So just people maybe to think about what they can do to help support their community. But just been real proud of Alpharetta and North Fulton and our state of how the communities just rallied together to try to support each other. So it's just been a wonderful weekend, and I'm looking forward to another wonderful 24 hours to see what we can do.
Amen. Any other reports? Well, I just want to thank everybody once again for all you've been doing over the past few weeks on our council, our staff. It has been a really interesting year so far. And, you know, we're not out of this thing by any stretch of the imagination. But 2 months ago, none of us had ever been into a pandemic. And at least now, as we start to get to the next phase, whatever that may look at, I can feel people starting to hit their stride again, because we're starting to talk about opportunities. We're starting to look for ways to help within the city government, our staff looking for ways to help businesses succeed, to provide the flexibility the community needs to revive their businesses after being dormant for weeks. I'm proud of this city. I can't wait to see what we become next. We haven't gotten through it, but we are hitting our stride, and we're starting to adapt. We took the punch, and now we're just pulling together, and we're coming back. And I look forward to the next few months of getting this thing back in gear with everybody. Continue to stay in touch. Let us know what you need. Let us know what we can do to help. Thank you for everything. And with that, we'll adjourn the meeting.